Okay, welcome to Ultralight Startups. My name is Graham Lawler, and I am the founder of Ultralight Startups. Welcoming you here to talk about email marketing for startups this afternoon, this evening. This is, like all topics at Ultralight Startups, of great interest to me because I myself do email marketing and run a list and had some questions about how to grow that list, how to effectively use the list, what type of content to put on, what type of analytics to look at, how to segment it, what platforms to choose, etc. And my approach in general to solving such questions for myself is to try and put together a panel of experts to answer my questions for me. So we're all here to answer my questions, and I'm thrilled that you guys all could make it for that. As it happens with many of my questions, they happen to be other people's questions as well. And we are thrilled to have an expert panel here of highly knowledgeable people in the topic. And we are also thrilled to have today with us, for those of you who've been here at Ultralight since the early days, the only two-time moderator, also the only three-time moderator, and after today, the only four-time moderator at Ultralight Startups, Maisha Walker, who I was just mentioning, set the standard for moderation of Ultralight panels, and really, that's a very high bar. So, in addition to that, I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. She is an award-winning 12-year internet industry veteran and the president of Message Medium, a New York marketing firm that specializes in helping small businesses grow through both traditional and internet marketing. Maisha regularly teaches free intensive website and internet marketing classes for entrepreneurs and is the e-commerce expert for Inc.com. Information about her upcoming classes is available on the Message Medium website, messagemedium.com. So thank you very much, Maisha, and look forward to the panel.
Thanks. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is just introduce our panelists, and then Graham has put these wonderful slides together, which I know you can read, so I'm not sure that I necessarily need to read them to you. But we have some other information here that we're going to walk through in a second. So as Graham mentioned, I didn't really get to do a pitch, but you sort of introduced my company for me, so thank you. There's a couple of other things I want to mention. I like to focus on the things that I'm doing that are free. So obviously we're a service provider, but my offer, magazine, is blog.inc.com/e-commerce. So you can go online and get, I usually write weekly in theory, but you can go online and get lots of free information about internet strategy, since I've been in this for actually 13 years now, up that number every year. I also teach a lot of free classes, as Graham mentioned. I get funded by the city and other organizations to actually provide internet strategy, website development information to entrepreneurs. You can find out about all of that on my website as well. And we just decided to actually do this program where we're raffling off a free website. So if anybody's interested in that, you can come up and let me know. Give me your email address. I won't spam you, but I will let you know about how to enter that raffle. So having said that, I am going to introduce our illustrious panel. So we're going to start with, I want to make sure I know what order to do this in. So we're going to start with Greg. Greg Caniosi is the CEO of Blue Sky Factory, which supports the email marketing for brands from leading Fortune 500 companies to performing artists such as U2, Justin Timberlake. Greg's previous startup ventures have included a 3-year run in the music industry as a concert promoter, starting and operating a touring food vending business, and running a small web interactive firm, all before starting his current company, Blue Sky Factory. Greg was also the lead author of the business podcasting book. So welcome, Greg.
Thank you.
Neil Capel is the founder of SaleThrough.com, a market-changing email service provider that handles all aspects of email delivery and tracking for automated emails for social networks, gaming, and e-commerce sites. After more than 10 years of redeveloping .coms as the CTO and fed up with the poor service and uptime of email service providers, he bootstrapped SaleThrough.com to be one answer to email delivery. Previously, Neil has been CTO of Music Nation, A Small World, and Money Media. So welcome, Neil. And we also have Adam Rich. Adam is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Thrillist, a daily email newsletter, which is a weekly contributor on NBC, NY Nonstop, and is a regular guest on WNBC, WNYW, WABC, CBS, The Early Show, CNBC, MSNBC, ABC Good Morning America, and Fox Business Network. So welcome.
Just go. Lots of letters.
And I think in a second, I'm actually going to go sit over there because that was a lot more comfortable. And I think it's wonderful. Actually, I haven't been to an Ultralight Startups event in a little while, but being someone that actually does a lot of teaching and speaking engagements, I know that one of the big challenges for you guys when you come to an event like this is to make sure that you understand all the terminology involved. So hats off to Graham for actually putting the time and energy into compiling this list of terms so that you guys will all kind of, we'll all be speaking the same language as we walk through your questions and get some advice from the panel. So, do you mind if I just sort of ask for a second if anybody has any questions about this? Because I think it's totally boring for me to read this slide, right? You don't need to do that. Does anybody have any questions about these terms? We can start there. No? All right, you will later. We'll warm you all up.
What's an example of transactional content?
I'm going to throw that at you guys.
Okay.
Transactional content could be, so you take an action on a website, you make a purchase, you get that triggered email, that's your thank you order. Follow up to an installation, you get an email, that's a survey. Basically when you take an action, a transactional email is something that is a result of what you've done. So the simplest example in my eyes is after you do a purchase, you get an email. That email opens up a lot of opportunities for marketers to do cross-selling, upselling. Also, like transactional can be as simple as your welcome email. Somebody signs up for your list, that kicks off a transactional kind of auto-triggered email to them, welcomes them to your list, tells them what they're going to expect, hopefully, when you're going to be sending them, what you're going to be sending them, allow them to control their preferences. A couple examples.
Awesome.
And what does CAN-SPAM say about commercial versus transactional? What can you do or not do?
CAN-SPAM allows for a lot of stuff, really, is what it comes down to. But really, it comes down to the opt-inness of your list and ensuring that you're actually sending proper emails that people want. But really, it does enable an awful lot. It does actually also enable the peer-initiated email, which is what we're seeing a lot more of now, which is the address book. A peer-initiated means that I initiated an email out to perhaps an entire Gmail address book, but I initiated that email, and that's a peer-initiated, and it allows for that too. So it really is quite flexible when you need it.
Excellent. So on that note, I think, well, unless anyone has any other questions about this slide? Anyone? Okay. On that note, I think that's a perfect segue to go to the next slide, because Greg, I'm going to ask you to actually talk to this slide.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is so a lot of people like to try to figure out. Graham asked me to help kind of frame up the email landscape. Sorry, you guys aren't on there yet, but I'll add you. And a lot of times people go, where do I start with? What kind of email service provider should I start with? Obviously, a lot of us are bootstrapping startups. We're entrepreneurs. We're not dealing with big budgets. So I kind of framed up the landscape in a pyramid format. The top of the pyramid being like the people, your enterprise, your Disney, your Pepsi, for using these folks, big databases. But the bottom of the pyramid is like the Constant Contact, iContact, MailChimp. Basically, you can get a free account. You can start for $20, $30, $40, $50 a month. They're not CPM, which is cost per thousand model. Some of them are cost per contact, so it's all based on how many people you have on your database and your list, and that's what you get charged by. So if you have 500 people on your list, you pay one price, and you can send to them as many times as you want. We love this part of the market because it introduces people to email. As they get more sophisticated, they get more needs. Deliverability becomes more important to them. Maybe some strategy, maybe some A/B split testing, creative strategy, that kind of stuff. They start moving up into the mid-market, which is the middle of the pyramid, and that's where my company is positioned, along with the other ones you see there. You can clearly see the pricing scale up on the right-hand side as it goes up. When there's more services involved, there's an account manager involved. There's more analytics involved. There's more integration involved, usually with a CRM system at some point. And then again, going to the top, you're a huge enterprise at that point. There's a lot more. There's many more vendors, including Niels, that play into this as well. But that just kind of frames up the landscape. So when you hear these names and you see these names and you see their, see them at events and sponsorships and whatnot, A lot of the folks in the audience, I would imagine, would be starting, at the bottom of the pyramid. Makes sense, right?
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody have any questions about this?
So you mentioned delivery rate, and when I'm actually looking for a newsletter provider now.
Okay.
And they all say, top delivery rate in the industry, and they're all pretty much 97%.
Right. Yeah.
When you're in that bottom part of the pyramid,
Sure.
How much variation are you really going to get, and does it matter? Does it really matter which one of those you choose?
Well, I mean, there's a couple different ways. When you get into the mid-market, you start to deal things with generally, unless you know of anyone now in the bottom market, that will offer like dedicated IP addresses. So email deliverability is really just based on reputation, right? So it's all about, your list, your frequency of your list, your complaint rate of your list, and whatnot. When you deal with the bottom end of the pyramid, these mailers are, they have C classes of IP addresses, and what they do is they school mailers on shared IP ranges. So you're basically sharing your email reputation with other mailers. And so bad things happen sometimes. Sometimes 97 drops down to 90. Sometimes you're up at 99. It's all over the place. So generally the bottom of the pyramid is, shared pooled IP addresses for email reputation. As you move up to the next level, it's all kind of tiered. Dedicated IP address. There's also things like authentication that gets set up. So SPF records, sender ID records, these types of things, domain keys, that basically, if you're using a third-party service and you're using their IP address to manage to run all your email through, that's the IP address that has the reputation. So having those little things in place allows you to authenticate. And when the ISPs get a piece of mail from you, they just authenticate and say, you know what, your company is allowing my company to send mail on behalf of you. It happens in a split second, but reverse DNS is another tactic that's used. So you don't get a lot of that down on the bottom end of the pyramid. Does that answer your question, sort of, kind of?
Kind of. I mean, I guess what I'm taking away from that is there's not going to be that much variation.
There's not going to be that much variation.
Yeah, there's not much variation with those. Because you have it all pulled, someone can do a bad thing and that's going to affect you, and that goes into it. And with what we do on our end of things, we're maintaining a much sort of control of all of your contacts so that you don't, we're an integrated product, so none of our clients can. So we do have shared IP space clients as well as our dedicated ones. And so for those shared IP space ones that are actually on that, there are no misbehaving parties because they can't. Because most of the other constant contacts in that, they're reactive. They'll notice the spam go out and then they've got to shut down that IP.
Yeah.
And they've got to move over. While for us, we're going to notice it the minute it starts happening and we shut that down. And we've had a few clients like that, but most of our clients are fully integrated and they realize that that's a bad thing.
And do you prefer any of the ones on the bottom more than the others?
Sorry?
Do you prefer any of the bottom?
I prefer MailChimp over all of them.
I like MailChimp over all of them.
One thing to bear in mind, though, is that the open rate is a pretty inexact thing, and it comes down to a lot of sort of technical issues that can affect whether the figure you're getting is actually accurate.
Yes.
So, for instance, it can depend on whether you're using a different version of Outlook. So, like Outlook 2008, if you look at it in the preview window, maybe that sends back a ping that it opened, maybe it doesn't. Different version of Outlook may behave differently. So it really comes down to whether the images are being served, what the program you're reading the email with is, and so it'll vary, and it depends on the kind of list that you're trying to build. But if you're going B2B, people are looking at these things in proprietary, in Lotus notes because you're targeting banks. That may behave differently and give you different open rates than what anybody would claim to report.
Thank you.
I would also just add one thing to that, and that's just, through the classes and services that we provide, I've worked with a lot of small business owners and just done tons of research online. And in that bottom tier, I think that unfortunately Constant Contact, which is probably the most famous, is probably the worst for deliverability for that reason, because so many small businesses are using it and they don't quite know what they're doing it, so they make a lot of mistakes. I've also heard anecdotally that AWeber is one of the best in terms of deliverability. Those are anecdotes. What I would say is just go around and ask people what their experiences have been.
I'm on Constant Contact, and it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
But the user interface on AWeber is heinous.
Yes, I've heard that too.
I think it requires a little bit more patience, but once you've actually gone through it, if your emails are going to get into someone's inbox, it's worth it. Yeah, in the back.
I use SimplyCast. Have you heard anything about that in terms of deliverability?
I haven't. Have you guys?
I've not, no.
No.
It is
You have to say
definitely
something.
the cheapest.
What's that?
It's definitely the cheapest. But it's probably that's what I'm worried about. It's definitely the cheapest. I mean, it's like a penny for every email you send.
Right, yeah, you just gotta be careful. And a lot of times it's just really a matter of testing. You get online, they're $10 a month. You try to send a couple of emails out and see what happens. But as these guys said, also, those rates can go up and down depending on what other people are happen to be doing with the service at the time, so. Yeah.
Off the top of your head, do you guys know, does MailChimp add the branding tag to the bottom of their emails? I know I contacted them.
As somebody who has migrated to MailChimp as
what's
recently
that
as 3 days ago.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, what's that about?
What's going on?
I'll be lucky enough to graduate up to the mid-tier. But for now, I was enticed by their very lovely graphics.
You like the monkey? You like the chimp?
But I'll say for free, if you're not paying at all, and you can only get that up to 500 addresses, they do include their MailChimp logo, and you can optionally include it even when you're paying, and that you get some kind of rewards points that allows you to access some other features that I can't quite explain because I didn't read that part. But yeah, so it's up to you if you're paying is the answer.
Also, constant contact, should you choose to use them even after discount, you can call them up and ask them to take the logo off. But you have to like go out and ask them.
Okay.
Aside from these at the lower end, the MailChimps and the chimps and so forth, if you want to get up above that and start running some of the products that are server-based, anything from like PHP List or EasyMLM or any of those kind of things, up to some of the more full-featured ones like Interspire and so forth, what advice do you have? Do you expect that someone who did that would get better hit rates or better delivery rates than with a MailChimp or a Constant Contact? And what advice would you give somebody with that?
Well, I mean, the delivery really comes down to your reputation, as Greg was saying. So it is almost more about the IPs than anything else. So when you're dealing with something where you're sharing the IP, you're only as clean as the dirtiest person you're sharing the IP with, and that's going to take it out of your hands. And if you're doing something where even some of the mid-tier ones, I mean, we used Silverpop for a little while, and we had our own IPs, and we kept them as clean as possible. They were spick and span, and our stuff got through.
I think generally when you're using something that's on your own infrastructure, you're bearing the weight of basically all aspects of it. I mean, the open source one, the PHP List, is a relatively popular one. But to Adam's point, when you have to deal with the IP addresses and actually managing deliverability, that's generally when people actually start and move to, whether it's the bottom or the top or the mid-tier, they're generally making the switch because deliverability is just such a pain in the butt to manage, frankly. You need to get so much insight into what's happening at the ISP level, what's your feedback loop look like, how many people are hitting report as spam, that maybe aren't hitting opt-out and opting out. All that data is available to marketers. It's just a matter of, at what point do you pull the trigger and say, I need to really manage this, I mean, Adam used Silverpop for a long time. I mean, they're sending so much email now. They actually built their own infrastructure, but they have the expertise to do it in-house. You got resources to throw at it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were a startup, and I was sort of faking my way through the tech stuff. We were down in that bottom tier, and we were looking for the most turnkey solution possible. Now we've got a tech team of 6 guys, and we can put together a server and set it up and go with an enterprise solution. But I mean, it wasn't always that way, and we worked our way up the food chain, just like I imagine most new businesses will do.
The thing with the management software and that kind of side of things, or CRMs that do this, is that it's fine if you've got your own IP and you're looking after it, but if there's any kind of bug that creeps into it, whether it be from their end or from modifications, we see that a lot with our customers, is that they've made a mistake and unsubscribes stop being, honored. But that's where we've created to make sure that those are always honored, the spam requests and everything, so that you can't go wrong, and thereby actually always keeping that clean delivery.
Excellent. I would just add to that I think you really want to understand what the major distinction is between those kinds of software and what these guys are offering. As a business owner, you really want to make sure that you're spending time on running your business, not on running your software. So for email list management, again, having just been through all of that, having used some of the software, having used things that actually sit on a computer 10 years ago that sit locally, you try to set things out through ISP, complete nightmare. But also, as far as I know, those services or the software doesn't offer any kind of data, no analytics. And those are the things it's not just about sending the emails out, it's really about learning about your audience and learning about the people that are on your list so you can provide better services to them and better content. So when you're using something like that, you're not going to get any of that information. With a service like this, you can find out, and they're not paying you to say this, but you can find out down to the person that is attached to that email address what their history of click-throughs are. What are they actually interested in? So you can actually go and find your most active users, your most active customers, and get information about them and their habits and their needs. So it's like apples and oranges comparing the two.
Can I throw one more thing in? Yeah, some of that software is getting pretty sophisticated now, and it's giving you that. It's giving you click-through tracking and tracking the subscribers on a day-to-day basis and so forth. One of the ones that I'm looking at uses SMTP Relay, and basically use smtp.com to deliver the mail. So am I in that same position again, where their IP is dirty, then I'm sending my mail through a dirty IP?
I mean, that's less about the sort of technology that they're using than just what they're sending the emails from. And whether they use this kind of relay or that, it's really a question of whether they have a pool of IPs that all of their users are using, or you yourself are assigned one that you can manage. And that's going to be something you'll know if you're getting your own IP. And that's something that most places in the bottom tier, I don't think any do. And if you're in the mid tier, we have to ask and have it set up. I mean, it was one of our stipulations when we moved onto using Silverpop's service.
Because you know what's going out on your email stream, and you're not sending Viagra ads.
Yeah,
exactly.
No,
but as Neil said, it cuts both ways. So if you do screw up, it's on you. But if you behave and you're good, then that also is something you reap the benefits of.
Yeah.
Regardless of what level you're at, though, don't you find that the words you use to block you too?
Not really. Less than
use opportunity or modify.
less than less. It used to be content was like the main reason for filtering, and there still is a lot of content filtering. I'm not saying no, but less and less. It's more on reputation. It's not about having mortgage in the subject line or Viagra or whatever it may be. But there are definitely key terms that increase your ratio of spam, and is Spam Assassin's a popular tool that does content analysis. But the trend, it used to be if you said these things in subject line, you said these things in copy, you were going to get automatically filtered. There's still a lot of that, but it's less now. It's more reputation based on the IP.
So find out with Hotmail.
Hotmail's still very strict.
Yeah.
One of my clients still has a problem. It's B2B for high-end watches. So they have Rolex, Patek, and it's all real authentic watches, and we still have massive problems, especially since a lot of jewelers have AOL as their email address.
What are you sending from? Just curious.
He was using Constant Contact when we migrate to dedicated IP, but we still find that there's nothing we can get off the list, and we're just blackballed on so many of the blacklists. And very hard to get off in some cases. And because I understand, it's, you heard the word replica, and you'd have a whole different thing.
Right.
And that's what's triggering it.
And is it lead gen email, or is it this is actual opt-in watch stuff? Or
It's actually all subscriber. So it's actually people actually subscribe and paying a fee to the site.
It's surprising to hear on AOL, but I mean, there is one of the content filters, because a lot of this watch stuff comes from the lead gen and spam side of things, so it's understandable.
Yeah. So it's not like it's anyone who's sending out to consumers. These people actually deal with watches. Actually, know where every expensive watch is in the country.
In the back, yeah.
Can we shift the topic a little bit? How often can you email a new user of your service, let's say during the first 60 days and on an ongoing basis?
Well, I mean, you basically have to kind of form a contract with your user. I mean, that's basically what CAN-SPAM stipulates. And so if you tell the user you're going to get an email every 60 seconds, you can send an email every 60 seconds. I wouldn't join that list. But it's when you sort of break the faith that you run into trouble. So if you say you're going to get an email every week and you start sending it twice a week, that's when you run into problems.
It comes down to quality versus quantity, because if you're sending quality emails once a day, like Thrillers, then you're never going to annoy your user base as well. But if you're sending once a day and 5 out of 10 out of those emails are pure trash, then you're going to get the opt-outs and the spam flags. always send quality, engaging emails, because that's what's going to drive your user base, that's what's going to drive traffic, and that's what's going to make your site.
You probably have probably like one of the words you'll hear probably a million times tonight is relevance, right? And so that's what email's all about. And I think I mentioned in one of my things that irrelevance sort of is the new spam, right? If it's not relevant, your base is going to be less engaged. But we have, just an example, we have probably about 700 clients that we power their email for in tons of different verticals, everything from the nonprofit world to the entertainment industry. And we have clients who send once a quarter. We have clients who send once a month. We have clients who send once a week. We have clients who send every single day. We have a wine retailer that sends 7 days a week. 7 days a week, wine retail. Lowest opt-out rate and one of the best deliverability rates, because they have such an engaged wine enthusiast kind of audience that they've built, and they're sending really good wines, in very short installments, and their client base gets pissed if they don't get the email, because these people want to buy these wines from the southern. It is Gary, yeah. Which is amazing that he kind of goes against a lot of like best practice when people say, well, you send too much email, but we look at the numbers with Gary, and the numbers are incredible. I mean, he gets a very, very low opt-out rate, and he actually gets people, since he's got such a large list as well, and he's sending it every day, a lot of times he sells out a product before, clients get to their emails and get a chance to find out what's available and what's left. So it's just an interesting dynamic versus, somebody who sends once a month and they get a huge opt-out rate because they're sending crap content.
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind that unlike a website with email, your user has not taken the positive action to seek out your content. You're sending it to him unbidden, and yes, he decided to join your list, but you're essentially saying, hey, check this out. And so you've got to have something that they really want to hear about. And that's why, with us, for instance, we only write about things that are new. Why would I want to get an email out of the blue for no reason about a place that's been around for 5 years? So you need something to keep it relevant, and you need to have a reason to be tugging on your user's sleeve and sending that email.
How many people are on Thrillist's list? Just curious. Yeah. So I've been on Adam's list for over 2 years, and I'm still on the list. I got mine today. I mean, targeted, relevant, it doesn't annoy me. Good stuff.
Maybe it's one of the next slides, but can you explain to us how this reputation thing works?
That might be a long discussion, but essentially, you've got to look after your hard bounces, your opt-outs, all of this side of things, because it's and your spam reports. If you're not taking those emails out of your database, so you stop sending to them, then the ISPs notice, and they start to degrade your deliverability scores. However, AOL are doing it versus Hotmail. They start to degrade you because you continually send to A, hard bounces, B, even spam traps, which are email addresses set up to receive email only as spam, i.e. they're supposedly not registered on any site, no one uses them, and therefore if they receive email, it is spam. If you hit a spam trap, then your deliverability score tanks. And that's the reputation. So if you're not managing that side of it, then and you're just sending email out continually, then after a time your reputation will degrade.
Do the ISPs coordinate with one another?
The ISPs do. The ISPs are looking at IP address reputation. There's also groups like Spamhaus and other groups that manage large reputation databases, and the ISPs get that data syndicated to them. So if you hit like to your point, if you hit a bad honeypot is what they're called, an email address that's set up as a spam trap, and you're one of those emails ends up on your list, you're going to get flagged right to the top of, let's say, a Spamhaus. And there's a million blacklists out there, but there's only a few that really matter. But in a minute, they can literally syndicate, a message out to all the major ISPs, and your email's not going to get through, and then you have a situation on your hands.
Can you actually, on that note, talk about what happens when you're on that list?
Well, if you're on that list and you're not working with an ESP, if you're, generally if you're down below here, your account's going to get shut off. So maybe some of you have experienced where Constant Contact turns your account off, or because you got too many feedback loop complaints or whatnot. If you actually wind up getting on a list, hopefully you're working with somebody who knows how to talk to those people, communicate what the issue was or what the incident was. A lot of times it's a bad list being uploaded, or somehow purchase lists, not a good idea. All that kind of stuff. And so what happens is, like what we do, we work with a company called Return Path and Pivotal Veracity, which are, they're big players in reputation monitoring and mailbox monitoring globally. And so we have a dashboard. So any ESP who's worth their weight and knows what they're doing should have a dashboard that looks at every single IP address from every single one of their senders and can see what kind of rating they're in. Are they above like the threshold of? I mean, everybody has problems and whatnot, but when you get on a blacklist, someone needs to go to bat for you, and generally it's the ESP, being the kind of the conduit between the client and the blacklist. Spam House is one I keep mentioning. You should check them out. You don't want to be on Spam House. They can literally shut your entire operation down. We've probably had 2 or 3 Spam House incidences over our 9 years in business, and they're ugly. I mean, we charge our clients if we have to do that for them. So it's a long answer to your question is basically, if you get on a Spam House or if you get on a blacklist, some of them you can deal with as the sender. If you get on one of the top ones, you should really have your ESP going to bat for you.
Basically, I'm just wondering, a lot of times, after sending out an email blast, I have people requesting to be removed from the list, to which a lot of times I remove them, but sometimes I just give them a link, and I'm like, click here to unsubscribe. Is that allowed? When somebody says remove you from the list by the law, are you supposed to remove them, or can you give them a way to unsubscribe?
You got to take them off, and that email with the link is spam.
Yeah, you have to have that enabled in the email that you actually sent out, and you have to do a couple. Canned spam is pretty simple when you think about it, but you have to send an email with an opt-out link. Somebody can click on, remove themselves from your list, and you also have to provide a working, valid reply address, so that if someone doesn't do that and they hit reply and say, "Please take me off this list," somebody should be monitoring that on your end, and then you have a certain amount of time. I think it's 10 days, I forget what it is, to take them off the list, That's also why you have to have a postal address at the bottom of every email to be compliant, just in case somebody actually takes the time to write and say, please take me off the list, which I've never seen before.
The problem I kind of face is that sometimes people request to be removed from the list, and they actually are not on the list, but a previous employee of theirs
added them?
The guy who position they filled in is on the list, and it's hard to trace which email is being forwarded to them.
Well, sometimes you do get asked requests for email addresses that you don't have in your system because they've got it forwarded. You've got to work with them and get it removed, but frankly, the email should have the link in it. And when they click in it, it doesn't, you know exactly which email address it is because that link is for that person. It's a personalized URL, so they click it and they're opted out.
Yeah.
I've heard obviously the horror stories of buying lists and it's just not a good idea.
Yeah.
But then someone told me about the concept of renting a list.
Yeah.
Is that productive or if we're trying
well,
to generate 100,000 subscribers?
I'll just take a minute and talk to that because we used to do a lot of list rental at my business for the first 4 years. We were in that business. So clients, most of our businesses, the client brings us their database. We help them manage it and market it to them and give them advice, strategy, and best practices. Then there's the other side of the equation. There's the people who want new subscribers, new customers, new people, new users, etc. That landscape has changed a lot. We are way out of that business now because basically, again, we're in between. Generally, when you rent a list, you're not going to work with an ESP. Whoever's got the list is going to send the mail on behalf of you. So you're just going to wind up giving a piece of creative, and they're going to wind up sending it out. The quality and the conversion rates of those lists has gone down really bad. And so now what you're seeing is the ones that are actually worth anything are like $400 per 1,000 names, for a one-time drop. So if you want to reach 5,000 people, you do the math. It's super expensive.
Well, I think newsletter, this is one of the things that is kind of a drag about the industry is that newsletter could not be a less sexy term. And so there's, we sit down and try and think of ways to make it sound like a little more glamorous, but newsletter kind of sucks. So, talk about what the newsletter is going to give a person. Because if you say, hey, do you want another email every morning? People are like, no way, I'd like less. But if you're like, would you like the content? Would you like a reverse wine auction or a flash sale or a tip on a new restaurant, for instance? That's what's going to get people in the door. The email is that's the mechanism, but it's the content that's going to build your list. But as far as building a list, like we sent our very first email out to 600 people, and it was friends who we
Fully opted in.
Fully opted in. But that's how we got started, and we bootstrapped from there. And to out of nowhere, all of a sudden, start a big list. There's not really, unless you know something I don't. It's not an easy thing to do, and if you play it fast and loose, you're probably going to get in trouble for it.
Yeah, I think, just to add to that, I think your question is really just a general marketing question. How do I get people interested in my products? How do I get traffic to my website? How do I get people to join me on Twitter? How do I get people to join my email list? So I think you're really looking at just visibility. If you've got something that you at least believe people are interested in, and they want to buy or they want to hear about, that's step one, which is I think what Anne was saying. But then you got to get in front of people. So you come out to events like this and you pitch. You try to do guest blogging. You build relationships with other people. You can tell people about your business and what you have to offer. You can run contests, which are a great way to drive traffic to your site, but I wouldn't necessarily attach an email subscription to your contest. You can get traffic to your site and then make the join my something under the newsletter button really prominent, so that if people want to hear more about the content or the products you have to offer, they can do that. But I don't think there's any necessarily silver bullet to building an email list as opposed to just building a customer base.
I went through this process of finding, I think, what essentially is something on the bottom tier of the pyramid on the last slide. I have, my budget is $30 a month or thereabouts. So what is differentiating the various platforms there? And these are some of the things that I thought I detected that differentiate those platforms. Obviously, a lot of them offer integration with various things. I run events, so the fact that MailChimp integrates with Eventbrite was something that sold that to me. Also integrates with Google Analytics, which I'm a big user of, and I don't do any e-commerce, nor do I have a CRM system, so I assume that some people out here do, and if so, probably there's some platforms that are better than others. I don't know. The social media thing is curious to me. I mean, I guess you want to try and make a list viral, right? You want to, somebody gets an email in their inbox, and like, it'd be great if your subscribers did your marketing for you and forwarded it to all their friends who all signed up for it. That's probably a wonderful way to grow a list in an opt-in fashion. But how do you do that? Social media is probably an overused phrase, so I don't know. Maybe there's some questions we can ask just right in that integration section.
Yeah, I'll just talk real quickly about, CRM, we'll put that aside, but social media integration is sort of, everyone's familiar with forward to a friend. You get an email, forward to a friend, pop a browser, type their email address in, or maybe 4 or 5 of them, forward to a friend, kind of your example. It's great, relatively low adoption rate across the industry. We look at our metrics all the time. Not many people use that feature. We launched Share with Your Network, which is basically share the email with your subscribers' social network of choice: Twitter, LinkedIn, MySpace, Dig, whatever it is. And then, like you said, it's basically what we've seen is it's like an email campaign on top of an email campaign. Because if you have influencers on your email list that have large Twitter following, large fan base on Facebook, maybe they're active in some really active LinkedIn groups, etc. All of a sudden, your content is going to go way, way, way beyond where you originally intended it to be, which is the recipient's inbox. So, as an example, and one of the things that I think is really relevant for this crowd is we just did a study about this at my company. We looked at 10 different clients in 10 different industries, and looked at their last 3 email campaigns that were using Share with Your Network, so allowing the sharing capability within email. And we looked at across all those campaigns in all those industries, the average reach increase was 12% across all that. And we have clients, and when I say reach, you take the number of views of your email that's out of the inbox. So the way we do it is you hit share, someone shares with their Facebook profile. We create a separate version of that with a tiny URL, and we track that piece of creative completely separate than the one that went to the inbox. So you can see it went to Facebook, it was viewed this many times in a news feed when somebody clicked on it, and then we track the click-through rate separately. But the reach is basically the number of views divided by the number of emails that were sent or delivered, and that's how you can calculate reach. So we have clients who are using, Share With Your Network to give away books, conference tickets, all that kind of stuff, incentivizing their groups. Because in the back end, doesn't matter if you use a company like mine or anyone else who's got Share With Your Network, you should be in the metrics, be able to see who's the influencer, who shared it by Medium, who are the top influencers by Medium, how many views, how many clicks your email got outside of the inbox in the social web, and more importantly, how much of the reach increase of your message went. So we have one client who just recently got 70% reach, now increase, which is a lot, but his email list was small. It's like 700, 800 people, so it's not massive. But even when you scale that out, every little incremental percentage point is just that much free kind of reach in your email. You just get that many more eyeballs on it. So to your point, basically integrating email with social media, even just with a basic sharing principle, is allowing your subscriber base, who if you are doing the right things like Adam's doing, sending targeted relevant content, they're going to share that content if they find it relevant with their groups and their networks, and you're going to get that much more exposure. That's like that's just social media. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Anybody have questions to follow up on that? What about in a content management system? I mean, some of these say integrate with Drupal, for example. So what does that mean? And, I guess I have a site that's going to be sending transactional emails certainly on a regular basis. Is that important to do through the same platform that I'm sending marketing emails through, or would I ever want to have two separate platforms for that?
I definitely. I mean, that's our premise, is that having it all in one, unified system enables you to do analytics across your entire breadth of things, and at the same time, you can track you can create engaging welcome emails that have, real-time relevant information within them coming from your site, so that you can actually engage better open rates in your mass mail as well. So you bring that across the whole thing, the analytics across the whole thing, and you actually look at how many people are actually coming back to your site after they've signed up for a welcome message, because you may be a social network, send out a welcome message and that's it, they're gone. But you're not tracking any of that piece, and you're not tracking that they came to it once or they came to it twice, and how much longer the bounce rate was on these side of things. And if you're not doing multivariate testing, A/B split testing on your welcome emails, you've got to be doing that, because the welcome email is the handshake with the user, and it's a very important piece of e-commerce or social networks. If you're sending a text-based welcome email right now from your website, you are losing traffic, and you need to change that immediately, because you need to engage that user brand-wise, content-wise, and get them back to your site immediately. We have customers that send authentication emails to authenticate that it's a real address, and then they'll send a welcome email 2 hours later. That has increased return visits to the site quite amazingly.
Okay, questions on that, or we can go on to the authoring stuff. Again, this is distinctions between kind of bottom tier platform. If I'm using MailChimp, all of this is in the same platform. I'm authoring my email there as well. Maisha and I talked about HTML email client compatibility, which is a phrase, maybe there's a better phrase for this, but the idea that there's only a limited set of web browsers, and you can, if you're creating a website, test on 3 or 4 different browsers and be sure that 90% of the visitors or 95% are going to be using one of those. Whereas there's many more email clients than there are web browsers, and how do you know that the formatting that you're doing in your authoring tool is going to show up right, or is it going to be all messed up? So can you talk about authoring differences?
So you framed it up good too. I mean, it's easy to code for the web because there's only a handful of widely accepted market share browsers, but there's hundreds of email clients literally. So the way that the market's responded to that for marketers is providing rendering tools, and you might have seen this if you use a platform, many of you. MailChimp does have this. They call it Inbox Inspector. So you can take your email creative, and assuming that, and there's a lot of guidelines on best practices for HTML, like you don't want to use any kind of JavaScript, you don't want to use CSS. There's a lot of tweaks for the design, but assuming you've got that kind of cracked, you can see what your email is going to look like essentially in all of the major clients, including iPhones and BlackBerries and different versions of mobile environments. and you can look at your creative with images on and images off, and you can kind of forecast and see where the breakpoints are, or if you have to go back and tweak some HTML a little bit. But if you're using like pre-canned templates by one of the ESPs that like the ones that I listed in the pyramid, generally they should be designed to best practice so that images on, images off is a totally separate issue. But just the way your email renders should be okay. But if you're doing your own design and you're importing your own creative into a platform to send it, you should really have that inbox inspector. We call it campaign preview. Just look at, see what you're. I mean, it's cheap. It's usually an add-on or an a la carte cost of an ESP because you don't have to do it every time. Once you have a template that works, you might not want to test it over and over again. So rendering is the solution to that.
But analytics, we've run now a panel on web analytics, which I found hugely enlightening. I'm an avid user of Google Analytics now and regular user of that. Eventbrite also has great analytics built in for those of us that run events. I was blown away by the analytics that were built into, because I had to mention them again, MailChimp, because that's what I just migrated to. Visually appealing and just opens your eyes to what's happening, which was not, I was previously using PHPList, but had none of that whatsoever, and you have no idea what's going on. And, I have all these flying pie charts and everything else, and it's like, wow, man. And on an individual basis, if you open my email 3 times, I know you open my email and not somebody else. It's not just like an aggregate number, and I can say, wow, he was really interested in that, and I can call you up afterwards. I think that blew me away. So I guess my question here is, in differentiating amongst the platforms, what do you look for there? What are important metrics to look at? Do they all report the exact same things, or are there things that that you should be particularly keyed into, and differences amongst platforms and what they report?
So I mean, we have I think a lot of us have the same things, and then there's just a couple of us, different ones put in different types of reports. Some do you want to see geographically where your open rates are. I know them will overlay a map on top of your metrics. But open rates, click-through rates, you should be able to look at, if you have multiple links within your email, you should be able to see by individual link how many clicks, so you can see what content was the most popular with your base and what was most relevant to them. Your opt-out rate, your forward-to-a-friend rate. In a lot of cases, we talk about conversions. So conversion tracking is something that is, did a user fill out a form? Did they sign up for Graham's events? Did they become a lead? Did they make a purchase? Whatever your conversion event is, generally you can track that through the ESP. Or if you're integrated with Google Analytics, which most are, you can track that in Google Analytics. What am I missing? I mean, those are the ones that most deliverability rate. You want to see that metric.
Spam. Did they click on the spam button?
Your
spam rate. Yeah.
Spam rate.
I would also look at, we tend to look at the open rate as a trend, but just plainly because it's the open rate is really just on the images being turned on. Yeah. And so it's not really an open rate. It's an established standard, so I'm not going to change it now. But it's a good trend to look at, because if you see it move, then something's changed in your audience. But it's not a real figure that is something to base the click-through rate off, which is what a lot of the constant contacts of the world will say. Okay, well, you've got a 28% click-through rate because we based it off your open rate. You've got people that have the text, email, and whatever, and they'll add that in, but it's an odd statistic to be messing about.
The other thing I would just say is a lot of the tools out there have kind of where you said the word trend, is not look at an individual distribution, but really look at maybe a month or 3 months at a time, and then look at is your open rate trending upward? Is it leveling off? Do you have an opt-out rate that seems to be ticking up? Is your click-through rate declining? All that data will tell you how you're doing, as in terms of sending out content to your base. Again, the more engaging, the more relevant, i.e., Test Adam, you're gonna have subscribers for a lot longer. Also, you might get to a point where you might want to start segmenting your list based on what people are doing. So in our case, well, not in our case, but our client's base, they look at behavioral data. Sometimes if somebody, like one of our retailers, if somebody clicks on a certain product category over and over again, they'll just create a segment for those people and say, these people are always interested in, that wine from this region, for example. And that again, you're kind of moving more towards the one-to-one communication with that subscriber. So the data and segmentation is something to look at as well. That starts when you start getting a little more sophisticated and you really start optimizing your campaigns.
Okay, I'll take one more. In the back. Yours.
Yeah, I just have a question. Yeah, basically, my question is, what is a good opening ratio for emails? If you send out, is it, I heard it's somewhere around 2%.
Ooh.
Or 5%. I mean, what is a good opening ratio if you send out like 50,000 emails?
Are we talking lead gen?
Yeah.
Are we talking lead gen? Or are we talking real opt-in email here?
We're talking about like.
Because those statistics sound pretty.
This is not really. It's a kind of a cold list.
Yeah, it's a lead gen.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get with that kind of lead gen. I mean,
So
if you're lucky, if you get 2%, and to that point, you've got to be doing quality emailing to get real open rates of like 30 to 40% to even 70% kind of stuff.
So, but what's a good?
So like the
1%.
Well, yeah, lead gen, that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
It's always going to be low, and industry average for your list, your customer base list, is somewhere between 22 and 30% on average. I'm kind of doing a 10% there, but that's pretty much average. But that's average. I mean,
you can get
yeah, you can get 50, 60% open rates. You can get 40%. We have
But these are like a cold list. Like 2 or 3% is good.
I don't even deal in that world. I don't even know.
That's if you step outside the email list or email world specifically, that's kind of your direct marketing standard.
Yeah.
That's
like your direct
anytime you're doing any kind of direct marketing, you're going to see response rates of between less than 1% up to about 3%.
Yeah.
That's pretty standard.
That's pretty standard.
Another quick question. What is the best day to send out a mass email?
The best day to send spam.
You know what? Can I take that one?
Sure, yeah.
There is no answer to that question. It's really up to you to test your list. So I would try testing it on different days and then figuring it out for your list and your products or whatever you're selling.
Yeah, it also depends on the content of the message. Because if you're sending something out that's about, that's some sort of work-related thing, you're sending it to the people in the morning, it's going to work better on a work day than sending it on a Saturday. If it's an email about vacations and it's long and it's like, something people want to lose themselves in, send it on a Saturday when they've got time. I mean, you have to think about how people are going to interface with the email.
That's a great point, and anytime I get asked that question, and we have, like I said, over 700 clients, we have one of our clients who's in the hospitality industry who gets their best open rate because they tested over long periods of time on Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
That's like taboo to like anybody else in direct marketing, like Saturday morning, no one's at work, but they're selling the vacation dream, they're selling the Corona commercial, That people can't engage with that at work,
Test.
Test.
Test, always test.
Okay, so we're on to the final slide here. So I think we're running quite a bit over schedule. I feel we should just
we're going to spend
a
the night.
couple of pro tips from each of you on some of these bullet points. Let's start at the top. Building a list, increasing subscription rates. What's the secret to that?
Good product. There is no magic bullet. You have to set out to do something that is a good, desired service and do it excellently every single day and execute 100% every single time you do anything regarding the product, and that's the best shot you got.
Wonderful. Sounds good. Segmentation. So this is the question I had. In my older platform, PHP List, I had this idea of kind of chapters of ultralight startups, which still exist, and so people in Boston and London, and sending targeted emails, and then I imported that into MailChimp, and I was like, first of all, the import process wouldn't really make it easy to keep those segments, and then I started scratching my head and wondering, do I really need them at all? I mean, if I'm just sending in the same news, why do I need them? So, question: why segment, and how do I segment? What's the purpose of it?
I think you should segment on when you have locations in that respect. I mean, you can segment down that way, but segmenting can also be after the fact when you have a larger list and you're trying to get into the pieces and get people interested. We're trying to take that and say that that's an awful lot of work as well. We take a psychographic profile of every single one of our users and say, let's say you've got these pieces of content. we'll select which is the subject line for that user out of a list, rather than you sit there and go, all right, let's do that email there, and you're spending an entire day doing it. We're actually building up, a tag cloud on every individual and saying, let's take this one of 6 subject lines for this person, and order the content in that relation. So,
Yeah, I mean, the point is basically to, like you said, to drill down to your list to get more, to send more relevant content. The other type of segmentation that there is available to a lot of people is called behavioral-based segmentation. So remarketing is another common tactic where I've sent an email. I've got a certain group of people who've opened it, a certain group of people who've clicked on a particular link. Maybe 2 or 3 days later, I'm going to send them something else. Maybe it's a product offer, maybe it's an incentive to buy something, or whatever. So based on what they've done in the past, kind of optimizing your communications to get them to take action.
I just want to add 2 things to that. One, I think it's your point about relevance. I mean, everything that you talk about with email is about relevance because, again, you're sort of, like you said, tugging on that sleeve and saying, please read this. So segmentation is all about again, that's sort of marketing 101. It's can you make the message that you're sending more relevant by not sending it to everyone on your list. And if you're sending emails often, you can also get into a trap of what they call list fatigue. So if you're sending the same message to everybody when it's only relevant to 1/3 of your list, you can fatigue out your list where people just start unsubscribing because the messages you're sending aren't as meaningful to them. And on the point of behavioral segmentation, I actually got a really great email from someone whose list I don't even remember joining, who emailed me the other day and said, have you been reading my emails? Which clearly I hadn't. But I got this email and I was like, oh my God, he knows who I am. Clearly it was just a personalized message, but it was really engaging. So I think that behavioral segmentation, if you've got an option to do that with your service provider, can be really effective.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that the segmentation issue is increased. The benefits are increased exponentially when you can integrate your membership on your site with your subscription list, because you can pick up all the information much more easily on your site on a member profile than you can on a subscriber profile. Because subscriber, you're going to come in, you just want to drop your email address and run. Whereas if you're involved with a site, you're more happy to give information, or you give it more easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That you can mine that information to cross over to the email site.
Yep.
Okay, so if you're planning on leaving early, we're going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes anyways, but if you're planning on leaving, don't come back in because that sets off the alarm, I'm told.
Yes.
So there you go. Increasing delivery rates has been covered, I think, in good amount of detail, including the live list. What to send?
Relevant. Relevant emails.
Relevant email that people have opted in for. Right?
Yep.
Increasing open rates, getting users to read. Is there anything that hasn't been covered there? Okay. Getting users to click or convert. Pitfalls to avoid. Is there any tips that you have? Secret?
Don't spam is the pitfalls to avoid.
Okay, I think with that, maybe we should wrap it up. We are now 53 minutes behind schedule. Once again, these guys are all going to go down to Pershing Square for a drink right now, so don't even bother trying to approach them here because the place of power is going to be at Pershing. Very good. Okay, thanks very much, Manisha. Thanks for